going and taking the movement from vision to action in faith. Welcome back to this transformative journey through Genesis chapter 22 verses 13 and 14. We are now entering the final stages of our 10-part series, and if you have been faithful to walk this entire path with us, you have already experienced a radical reconstruction of your theology, your spiritual vision, and your understanding of divine provision. In video 1 you learned to lift your eyes and reorient your perception. In video 2 you discovered the theology of behold and divine interruption. In video 3 you explored the unexpected geography of provision from behind. In video 4 you encountered the mature costly ram that declares your infinite worth. In video 5 you learned that being caught is divine positioning, not punishment. In video 6 you saw how the thicket of thorns becomes the location of provision. In video 7 you discovered the paradox of power perfected in weakness through the horns caught in the thicket. Each video has been stacking truth upon truth, building a complete vision of God's redemptive purposes. If this is your first encounter with this series, one must urge you once more to begin at video 1. This is not a collection of independent teachings. This is a carefully sequenced progressive revelation where each truth depends on and builds upon everything that came before. The transformation you will experience is exponentially greater when you journey through the full sequence. But whether you are catching up or continuing with us today, we are about to explore a critical transition in the narrative that reveals how faith moves from passive observation to active participation. Today we focus on two Hebrew verbs that unlock the mystery of how you cooperate with divine provision. The verbs are vayelech and vikach, translated as and he went and he took. These verbs mark the shift from seeing the ram to receiving the ram. They show us that faith is not merely intellectual assent or emotional wonder. Faith is movement. Faith is action. Faith is the deliberate choice to reach out and take hold of what God has provided. By the end of this teaching you will understand the theology of active faith. You will learn how to move from beholding provision to appropriating provision. You will discover that God provides, but you must participate. And you will gain practical tools for taking hold of what heaven has prepared for you. Genesis chapter 22 verse 13 says, Vayisa Avraham et enav vay vining achar aye nichas basevach bekarnav vayelek Avraham vikach et hail. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in a thicket by its horns, and Abraham went and Abraham took the ram. We have explored every element up to this point. Now we must understand vayelech and vikach. The verb vayelech is from the root halach, which means to walk, to go, to proceed, to journey. It appears here in the kal stem vayikol form, which indicates narrative sequence and completed action in the past. The kal stem is the simple active voice. Abraham walked. He moved. He proceeded. This was not passive observation. This was deliberate, intentional physical movement toward the provision. The verb vikach is from the root lakach, which means to take, to receive, to grasp, to acquire. It also appears in the kal stem vayikol form. Abraham took. He grasped. He received. He made the provision his own. This was not tentative reaching. This was confident appropriation. Abraham did not ask permission. He did not hesitate. He did not wonder whether the ram was really for him. He saw it. He went to it. He took it. The sequence is critical. First Abraham lifted his eyes. Then he looked. Then he beheld. Then he saw where the provision was. And then he went. And then he took. There is a progression here that maps the anatomy of faith. Faith begins with reorientation, lifting your eyes. Faith deepens with attention, looking. Faith marvels with recognition, beholding. Faith locates with perception seeing. Faith moves with action going. Faith consummates with appropriation taking. This is not a passive process. This is not sitting and waiting for God to drop provision into your lap. This is active engagement. This is cooperating with what God has done. God provided the ram. God placed it in the thicket. God held it there. But Abraham still had to go and take. Divine sovereignty and human responsibility are both at work. God acts and man responds. Heaven provides and earth receives. Grace offers and faith appropriates. Let us explore the deeper meaning of the verb halach, to walk or to go. This verb appears over 1500 times in the Hebrew Bible, making it one of the most common verbs in Scripture. It is used both literally for physical movement and metaphorically for the conduct of life. When God says to Abraham in Genesis chapter 12 verse 1, "Go from your country," the verb is lech, an imperative form of halach. Abraham's entire life is characterized by going. He is called the father of faith because he walked when God said walk. He went when God said go. He moved when God said move. The verb halach is also used throughout Scripture to describe how one lives. Psalm 1 verse 1 says, "Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked." Walking is living. How you walk is how you conduct yourself. Micah chapter 6 verse 8 asks, "And what does the Lord require of you but to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with your God?" Walking with God is the essence of relationship. It is ongoing movement in His presence. It is step-by-step obedience. It is daily following. When Abraham goes toward the ram, he is doing more than taking a few physical steps. He is demonstrating a pattern of life. He is showing what it looks like to walk with God. You see what God provides. And then you go toward it. You do not sit passively waiting for it to come to you. You move. You step. You walk in the direction of provision. This is a critical principle that many believers miss. They pray. They ask God for breakthrough. They lift their eyes and maybe even see what God has provided. But then they do nothing. They do not move. They do not go. They wait for God to bring the provision to them. And they wonder why they remain stuck. But the pattern of Scripture is clear. God provides. You perceive. And then you go. You move toward what God has shown you. The verb lakach, to take, is equally significant. This verb appears over 900 times in the Hebrew Bible and it carries the sense of personal appropriation. When a man takes a wife, the verb is lakach. Genesis chapter 4 verse 19. It implies commitment, ownership, making something or someone your own. When the Israelites take possession of the promised land, the verb is lakach. Joshua chapter 1 verse 11. It implies conquest, claiming, receiving what has been promised. When Abraham takes the ram, he is not stealing. The ram was provided for him. But he still must take it. He must reach out his hand. He must grasp it. He must make it his own. This is the theology of receiving. God gives, but you must receive. Heaven offers, but you must accept. Grace provides, but you must appropriate. Jesus uses the same language in the New Testament. In Matthew chapter 7 verse 7 he says, "Ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find, knock and it will be opened to you." Notice the verbs. Ask, seek, knock. These are all active. You do not just sit and hope God will give. You ask. You do not just wait and wish for discovery. You seek. You do not just stand outside hoping someone notices. You knock. Faith is active. Faith moves. Faith takes. Now let us connect this to the broader narrative of Abraham's life. This is not the first time Abraham has demonstrated active faith. When God called him to leave Ur of the Chaldeans, Abraham went. Genesis chapter 12 verse 4. When God told him to look at the stars and believe the promise, Abraham believed. Genesis chapter 15 verse 6. When God commanded him to circumcise himself and his household, Abraham obeyed. Genesis chapter 17 verse 23. When God told him to take Isaac to Mount Moriah, Abraham rose early in the morning and went. Genesis chapter 22 verse 3. Abraham's faith is never passive. It is always expressed in movement, in action, in obedience that requires physical response. And here at the climax of the testing, when the ram appears, Abraham does not break the pattern. He sees the provision and he goes and takes. This is mature faith. This is tested faith. This is faith that has learned to cooperate with divine action. The two verbs vilech and vikach also appear together in other significant moments in Scripture. In Genesis chapter 24 verse 10, when Abraham's servant goes to find a wife for Isaac, the text says, "And the servant took 10 camels from the camels of his master and went." The going and the taking are linked. You go toward what you need and you take what has been prepared. In Exodus chapter 4 verse 20, when Moses returns to Egypt, the text says, "So Moses took his wife and his sons and had them ride on a donkey and went back to the land of Egypt." Again, going and taking are joined. Obedience requires movement and appropriation. The Masoretic cantillation marks above vilech and vikach guide the reader to experience these actions with appropriate emphasis. The accent patterns suggest a smooth, continuous flow. Abraham did not pause between seeing and going. He did not hesitate between going and taking. The actions flowed naturally from perception to movement to appropriation. This teaches us that when you see what God has provided, you should move immediately. Do not overthink. Do not second guess. Do not wait for a sign. The provision itself is the sign. Go and take. Now let us explore how the Church Fathers understood this movement from vision to action. Saint Augustine, in his writings on grace and free will, grapples with this exact dynamic. Augustine argues that salvation is entirely by grace. We do not earn it. We do not produce it. God provides it. But Augustine also insists that we must receive it. We must appropriate it. We must exercise our will to say yes to what God offers. Augustine writes that grace is not irresistible in the sense that it forces itself upon us. It is irresistible in the sense that when we see it clearly, we cannot help but desire it. And having desired it, we must reach out and take it. Augustine uses the analogy of a man dying of thirst in a desert. A stream of water appears. The water is pure gift. The man did nothing to create it or earn it. But he still must bend down and drink. He must cup his hands and bring the water to his lips. The water saves him. But he must participate in receiving the salvation. This is Abraham going and taking the ram. The ram is pure provision. But Abraham must move toward it and grasp it. Saint John Chrysostom, in his homilies on faith and works, emphasizes that faith without action is dead. Chrysostom uses James chapter 2 verse 17, which says, "So also faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead." Chrysostom argues that real faith always produces movement. If you truly see the provision, you will go toward it. If you truly believe God has given you something, you will take it. The going and taking are the proof that the seeing and beholding were genuine. Chrysostom warns against a passive faith that says, "I believe God will provide," and then sits and does nothing. He says that is not faith. That is presumption. True faith sees what God has done and responds with action. True faith moves. True faith takes. Chrysostom writes that Abraham is our model. He saw the ram and immediately went and took it. He did not wait. He did not deliberate. He did not wonder whether he was worthy. He moved in faith. Martin Luther, in his writings on justification by faith alone, also grapples with this tension. Luther insists that we are saved by faith alone, not by works. But Luther equally insists that the faith that saves is never alone. It always produces works. It always results in action. Luther uses the analogy of a tree. A tree does not produce fruit in order to become a tree. It produces fruit because it is a tree. So a believer does not do works in order to be saved. A believer does works because he is saved. The works flow from the faith. When Abraham goes and takes the ram, he is not earning anything. He is not adding to what God has done. He is simply participating in it. He is cooperating with grace. He is expressing in physical action what he has already received in his heart by faith. The going and taking are the fruit of the seeing and beholding. John Calvin, in his commentaries on Genesis, reflects on the speed with which Abraham acts. Calvin notes that the text does not say Abraham thought about it or prayed about it or consulted with Isaac. It simply says he went and he took. Calvin argues that this is the mark of genuine faith. When you see clearly what God has provided, you do not delay. You do not question. You act immediately. Calvin writes that delayed obedience is disobedience. Hesitant faith is weak faith. Abraham's faith was strong and mature, and so his action was immediate and decisive. Now let us bring this into the realm of practical application and deep inner healing. The going and taking teach you that you have a part to play in your own breakthrough. God provides, but you must participate. Heaven makes provision, but you must appropriate it. Grace offers salvation, but you must receive it. Many believers get stuck at the seeing stage. They pray. God shows them something. They have a vision, a dream, a sense of direction. They see the provision, but then they do nothing. They do not go. They do not take. They wait for God to bring it to them. And they wonder why nothing changes. But the pattern of Scripture is clear. When you see what God has provided, you must move toward it. You must take action. You must reach out and grasp what heaven is offering. This is not works righteousness. This is faith expressing itself in obedience. This is cooperation with grace. Here is a practical exercise. Think about an area of your life where you have been asking God for breakthrough. You have been praying. You have been waiting. Now ask yourself this question. Have I seen the provision? Has God already shown me what He is providing? And if the answer is yes, then ask the next question. Have I gone toward it? Have I taken action to appropriate it? Or am I still sitting and waiting for it to come to me? If you have seen the provision but not moved toward it, it is time to go and take. Maybe God has shown you a relationship that needs to be reconciled. The provision is there. The other person has softened. The door is open. But you have not gone. You have not taken the step to reach out. Today is the day to go and take. Maybe God has shown you a new direction for your career. The opportunity is there. The door is open. But you have been afraid to step through. Today is the day to go and take. Maybe God has shown you a pattern of sin that needs to be broken. The provision of grace is there. The power to change is available. But you have not taken hold of it. Today is the day to go and take. The going and taking also speak to the healing of paralysis. Many people are stuck in spiritual, emotional, or psychological paralysis. They cannot move. They cannot act. They are frozen by fear, by trauma, by shame. And they wait for God to do something that will unfreeze them. But often the unfreezing comes through the act of moving. You do not wait until you feel ready. You do not wait until the fear is gone. You see the provision. And you move. And in the moving the paralysis breaks. This is the neurological reality of how trauma heals. Trauma freezes the nervous system. It locks you in a state of immobility. And the way out of that freeze is through movement. Small intentional physical actions that signal to your body that the threat has passed. That you are safe. That you can move again. Abraham going and taking the ram is a picture of this. He does not wait until the fear subsides. He does not wait until he has processed all his emotions. He sees the ram. And he moves. And in the movement he participates in his own deliverance. Speak these affirmations over your life today, rooted in the theology of going and taking. I am not passive in my faith. I cooperate with what God provides. I move toward what He shows me. When I see provision, I will go toward it. I will not wait for it to come to me. I will take action. My action is not earning. It is appropriating. I am not working for grace. I am receiving grace by moving in faith. I break the paralysis of fear. I choose to move even when I am afraid. Movement is the pathway to freedom. I trust that as I step, the way will become clear. I do not need to see the whole path. I only need to take the next step. I am a participator, not just a spectator. God invites me to partner with Him. I will go and I will take. Now let me speak to the implications for joy, success, and meaning in life. People who understand the going and taking principle are empowered. They do not see themselves as victims waiting for someone else to fix their problems. They see themselves as participants in their own transformation. And that sense of agency produces confidence. It produces momentum. It produces results. Success in life is rarely passive. It requires action. It requires movement. It requires taking hold of opportunities. The difference between people who succeed and people who stay stuck is often not intelligence or talent. It is the willingness to go and take. To see what is possible and to move toward it. To recognize an opportunity and to seize it. And this produces joy. The joy of knowing that you are not helpless. The joy of seeing that your choices matter. The joy of participating with God in creating the life He has called you to live. This is not self-help. This is biblical faith. God provides. You perceive. You move. You take. And in that partnership, heaven and earth collaborate to produce breakthrough. If this teaching has stirred you to action, I encourage you to continue with us. In video 9 we will explore the burnt offering. We will see Abraham offering the ram he has taken. We will discover the theology of worship as the ultimate expression of faith. We will learn what it means to give back to God what He has first given to you. Do not miss it. Subscribe to this channel now. Click the notification bell. Like this video and share it with someone who is stuck in passivity. Someone who has seen provision but not moved toward it. Someone who needs to be reminded that faith requires action. Be the catalyst for their breakthrough. If you need prayer, if you are struggling to move, if you feel paralyzed, when you need someone to stand with you in faith, reach out to us at christ4life143@gmail.com. We will pray for you. We will encourage you. We will remind you that you are not helpless. You have a part to play. And remember the ultimate truth. Abraham went and took the ram. You must go and take the lamb. Jesus is the provision. He is the substitute. He is the sacrifice. But you must receive Him. You must appropriate Him. You must take Him by faith. The gift is offered. The provision is complete. The salvation is accomplished. But you must go and take. Reach out your hand. Open your heart. Receive the grace that Heaven offers. And in that receiving you will find life and peace and joy forever. Stay tuned for the next video. Join us next time as we continue verse by verse through the inexhaustible riches of Genesis 22 verses 13 and 14.